Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, even though I've only ever played it once when I was a little girl. At that age, I didn't place too many question marks around the game's themes and mysteries. Still, at 11 years old, it made an impact on me that I couldn't quite place, and to this day, I haven't stopped thinking about it. But I have definitely wondered whether it's just nostalgia drawing me in. Whenever I start up a game I used to love as a kid, I barely get a few hours in normally. I'll play through the start and maybe a little beyond that, but not much more than that. I'll realize I booted up the game for the sake of memories, not to relive the game as a whole. That doesn't suddenly mean those games are bad, mind you, it just means that one time was enough. So, I'm going to play through Majora's Mask again, get every single mask, 100% it, and take you through it with me. I want to stop thinking about this game, and I can't do that until I've thoroughly concluded each mystery, at least for me. Shockingly, this video will contain spoilers for Majora's Mask, but also Ocarina of Time. And I feel it's important to mention that I will be considering information from the two games and real-world mythology exclusively, not the Hyrule Historia, the Encyclopedia, or other games in the series. At the end of Ocarina of Time, Navi, the fairy guide who's been accompanying us from the start of the game, leaves Link behind. Majora's Mask opens with Link's quest to find her again. Assumedly, we're in the Lost Woods, a strange forest that leads most astray, but connects the places around Hyrule in impossible ways. Before we take control, our horse, Epona, is spooked by two mischievous fairies, Tattle and Tail. Epona rears up and Link falls to the ground unconscious, giving the antagonist time to rifle through his pockets. The Skull Kid, wearing the titular Majora's Mask. It seems he recognizes us, remarking, "This guy," when he sees us. He doesn't consider it an issue though and steals both our Ocarina of Time and Epona. Link tries to cling to Epona in a bid to stop the escape, but he's quickly shaken off and we finally take control. The initial area is meant as a small control test area. There are bushes to swing your sword at and high logs to test your jumps on. Unfortunately, our jumping leads us to an inexplicable pit of darkness, and Link falls through a blur of colorful imagery reminiscent of Alice in Wonderland, except we have a sword. At the end of our fall, we find Skull Kid, who tells us he did us a favor by getting rid of our unruly horse. Laughing, he activates the power of the mask he wears to invoke the spirit of a small Deku scrub, a mere child. We're surrounded by Deku in a nightmare-esque sequence that turns us into that poor small Deku child. Skull Kid leaves, cackling, but as we try to follow, we're stopped by one of his fairies, Tattle. The door closes, and she's locked in with us. Without much of a choice, she demands we help her get back to her brother Tail, only remembering to apologize later down the line. Using our new Deku Scrub form, we move through the twisting underground until we find this curious little tree. It's strange, the description reads, but the way you look right now sort of looks like this tree. It looks all dark and gloomy, almost like it could start crying any second now. How sad. Stranger still is the twisting tunnel we enter just behind this weeping tree. The screen warps and turns until we make it into the underbelly of a clock tower. Inside this clock tower, we meet the Happy Mask salesman. He's the same man who runs the Happy Mask shop in Hyrule, and he was the victim of Skull Kid's theft. Majora's Mask was his, and he wants it back. He seems unaffected by your current form and knows it's not your true shape. If we find his mask, he promises to turn us back into ourselves. But we'd need our Ocarina back first, and he's a busy fellow, so he simply must leave in 3 days. If we could bring back his mask before his time here is up, he would be grateful. With that, we leave the clock tower and enter Clocktown in the land of Termina. Tattle, as our new fairy guide, makes us visit the Great Fairy in Clocktown first. In her words, the Skull Kid is no match for the Great Fairy. But when we find her, she's shattered into pieces. Skull Kid's doing. We need to find her missing piece before she can regain her body. When we do, she grants us the ability to use magic and tells us that she thought the masked child was helping her, and she grew careless. But if we wanted to know more about the Skull Kid, the man in the observatory might be able to help. To get to the observatory, we have to play a little mini-game first. Now that we have access to our magical bubbles, we pop the balloon just outside of the Great Fairy Fountain. The leader of the bomber squad was there to see it, and he's very impressed. So impressed that he challenges us to a game of hide-and-go-tag, which, if we win, will net us the secret code we need to access the bomber's hideout. This minigame sucks, and you have to do it twice. The astronomer at the observatory tells us that Skull Kid threatened to break his instruments and steal his moon tear. Even right now, he was standing on top of the clock tower. He invites us to look at the Skull Kid, and as we do, another moon tear drops from the sky. We pick up our new stone and make our way out again as the clock strikes. The moon tear can be traded to a nearby Deku merchant, who set up shop just in front of the clock tower. Now we can use his Deku flower to shoot our way up to the entrance of the clock tower, though it won't open until midnight on day 3, when the Carnival of Time comes to a head. We wait it out, and the clock tower eventually comes down, where, at the top, we find Skull Kid toying with our ocarina. Tattle pleads with him to give the mask back, but Tail suddenly pipes up. Swamp, mountain, ocean, canyon. Hurry! The 4 who are there. Bring them here. Annoyed, Skull Kid slaps Tail to the side. Tattle is shocked, but Skull Kid doesn't seem fazed. Instead, mentioning that even if they were to come now, they wouldn't be able to stop him. He screams at the moon again, and while he's distracted, we shoot a magical bubble at his head to make him drop our ocarina. When we pick it up, we remember the Song of Time from the previous game in a flashback with Zelda, because amnesia was free of charge while falling down the rabbit hole to Turbina. The Goddess of Time is protecting you. If you play the Song of Time, she will aid you. We try to use our ocarina, but in Deku form we instead pull out a set of Deku pipes. But just as well, we play the song and return to the first day of the Carnival of Time. The mask salesman is glad to see us, and immediately pulls an entire organ out of his pocket to teach us the Song of Healing, a tune that releases the Deku Scrub essence from our body and traps it into a mask, giving us our own body back. The salesman calls it a melody that heals evil magic and troubled spirits, turning them into masks. He lets us keep the Deku mask as a commemoration of this day, but when he realizes we don't have Majora's mask, gets a little upset. He pleads with you to go out and try to get it back again. If we leave the mask out there, something terrible will happen, and he finally gives us a little backstory on the mask itself. It's an accursed item from legend that is said to have been used by an ancient tribe in its hexing rituals. It is said that an evil and wicked power is bestowed upon the one who wears that mask. According to legend, the troubles caused by Majora's Mask were so great that the Ancient Ones, fearing such catastrophe, sealed the mask in shadow forever, preventing its misuse. But now, that tribe from the legend has vanished, so no one really knows the true nature of the mask's power. He went through great lengths to get his hands on this mask, and he could sense the doom of a dark omen brewing. We relent, of course, and leave to visit the swamp. The entrance to the swamp area also gives Tattle a moment to explain their relationship to Skull Kid. She draws our attention to a drawing in a nearby tree. Skull Kid made that. when he, Tattle, and Tail were still friends. The two fairies had found him shivering in the rain, alone. He told them that he'd been fighting with his friends and that they'd left him all alone. They find warmth together and start spending their days as a small family. Even then, he was playing tricks on people constantly, and she mentions that's probably why nobody else wanted to play with him. They were happy for a time, until they robbed the mask merchant. Inside the swamp, we can pick up a free pictograph from the local boat cruise, and we find out that Kome, the witch who runs the cruise, went missing while out looking for mushrooms. Her sister Kotake, who runs the potion shop, is worried, so we enter the woods behind the shop to look for the missing witch. This forest functions much like the Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time, so without a guide it's easy to get lost. This time our guide comes in the form of a monkey, who leads us to Kome. She's unable to move after getting attacked by Skull Kid, but after healing her with one of her sister's potions, she invites us on a free boat ride that will conveniently take us to the nearby Deku Palace. The Deku Palace, where a little monkey is being held captive for a crime he did not commit. His monkey brothers plead with us to save him, so we turn into a Deku scrub, buy some magic beans from a shady man living in an underground cave making weird noises all day, and infiltrate the holding cell from the garden. It turns out the Deku princess is missing, and the king assumed the monkey was responsible for her kidnapping. The guards at the entrance gleefully announce that the foolish monkey is being publicly humiliated and later tortured. But the monkey insists that monsters captured the princess and requests that we save her in his stead, teaching us the Sonata of Awakening, so we can enter the Woodfall Temple where she is held. Hearing the monkey ook the sonata confirms for the king that he did something to the princess, and they drag him off to be submerged in boiling oil while we leave for the temple. On the way there, we also meet an owl who teaches us the Song of Soaring, a teleportation song. We'll elaborate on him later. We collect the hero's bow in the Swamp Temple, and the resident boss is masked jungle warrior Udolwa, a humanoid enemy wielding a large sword and shield capable of summoning bugs to his side. When you defeat him, he drops his remains, the mask he was wearing. You have just freed the innocent spirit that this dark mask had kept imprisoned within the body of evil Udolwa, it reads. We're then teleported to a strange room with impossible pillars of liquid or smoke, rising from nothing and going nowhere. Here we meet the first guardian spirit. The spirit teaches us the Oath to Order song that will allow us to summon the giants eventually, and we're sent on our way. Destroying the evil inside the temple purifies the surrounding swamp, removing both poison and enemies from the area, and we find ourselves in front of the Deku Princess's prison, who, after hearing of the monkey's fate, demands we take her to her father to stop this nonsense. We, naturally, stuff her into a small glass bottle and make our way back to the palace, where she physically attacks the king and demands the monkey be set free at last. Back in Clocktown, we seek out the bombers again. Before, they wouldn't let us join because we weren't human, and the last time they'd let a non-human join, it was the Skull Kid, who made a mess of things. After playing their game again, they hand us the bomber's notebook. In essence, it's an extremely invasive diary that allows you to stalk anyone and everyone throughout the 3-day cycle like an absolute lunatic, but a well-meaning lunatic. Each time you meet someone who could use your help, they're added to your notebook along with notations that tell you when important events take place during that person's day. If you fix their problem, you get a sticker to mark their side quest as complete. This book is absolutely vital in our quest to complete a full mask collection because it tells you who still has rewards for you and when those rewards might be available. Book in hand, we go around town meeting as many people as possible to fill out our notebook, like Kafei's mother who is searching for her son and recruits you as a detective, or this elder lady at the bomb shop. She gets robbed at night and you can save her, but she will be stuck in this horrifying recurring nightmare until the very end of the game when I finally remember that she exists. With a slightly fuller book, we head towards the mountains next, where I initially try to climb the mountainside with the invisible ladder several times unsuccessfully. We we make our way to the Goron village, where we meet the owl again. He uses his feathers to lead you across some invisible blocks and towards a small cave that holds the lens of truth. It allows us to see the invisible, including a Goron ghost hovering nearby. The ghost is surprised to learn we can see him and bid we follow him. Using the lens, we track him to his grave at the top of the mountainside, where he introduces himself as Darmani III, a Goron hero. He died while trying to investigate Snowhead Temple. He asks you to bring him back to life, or if I can't do that, at least heal his sorrows. With the Song of Healing, Darmani is reminded of how revered he was among the Gorons as he drifts off, sealing his feelings and warrior spirit inside of a mask. The Goron mask that allows us to transform into a Goron resembling Darmani so much that every Goron we meet mistakes us for him directly, despite our outrageous new wardrobe, sudden lack of tattoos, and non-existent scar. As a Goron, we're strong enough to pull Darmani's grave back and release the hot spring water underneath. If we bottle it, we can melt frozen individuals. Hot water in hand, we roll down the mountain to find the biggest snowball in the field, and when we break it, it reveals the Goron Elder, frozen solid. We melt him, and he can't believe his eyes. Darmani is dead, so we must be a hallucination. When we turn into human form, he tells us instead that the village is suffering from a lack of supplies and his son is crying. But we haven't seen his crying son yet, so he doesn't care quite enough to progress the story at this point. We make our way back to the village and ask the only Goron standing outside to open the Goron shrine for us. Inside, we're met with the ear-piercing cries of the Elder's son. He's crying because he misses his father. We return to the Elder once more to tell him his son is crying, and even though he was clearly aware of this earlier, he still decides to help us calm him down this time. He teaches us the start of a lullaby but can't remember the rest. When we play this small piece in front of his son, however, the son recites the rest of it and we learn the Goron Lullaby. With this song, we enter the Snowhead Temple zone, where a strong wind blows anything off the path leading up to the entrance. That wind is caused by an invisible giant Goron. If you play the lullaby, the Goron falls asleep and rolls into the chasm below, allowing us to enter the temple at last, where we pick up the fire arrow. This temple's boss is masked mechanical monster Got, and upon defeat, the giant we freed tells us that he and his brothers are guardians, protective gods. That's why they're in the temples. With Got gone, spring finally arrives in the mountain and everything melts. With the Goron village back to normal, though somehow still entirely covered in snow, you can talk to this Goron here to get your powder keg license. As a test, he gives you an already active powder keg and tasks you with running it to the Goron racetrack to remove the boulder blocking it. Powder keg in hand, we visit the milk road leading to Romani Ranch. Skull Kid blocked it off with a boulder, and we're here to blow it up. At the ranch, we meet Cremia, the ranch owner, who's happy to hear the roads open again, as well as her sister Romani, who's practicing her bow in front of a fenced-off Epona. She teaches us Epona's song on account of our amnesia, and we finally have our horse back. With Epona, we can now visit the Gorman racetrack next door, connected to the Milk Road. It's ran by the Gorman brothers, and when you show up on Epona, they'll make fun of her and challenge you to a race. If you win the race, they give you the Garo mask. This isn't a transformation mask, but it is one of very few regular masks that's mandatory to complete the game. Epona also allows us to access the next main area in the game, Great Bay, where just off the coast we can see Azora drowning and pleading for help to get to shore. We push him to the coastline and he introduces himself as Mikau, a guitarist in the Zora band. He knows he's dying and asks that we listen to his final words, in song. He sings that their lead singer Lulu laid some strange eggs and lost her voice. To make matters worse, her eggs were then stolen by Gerudo pirates, and when Mikau left to get them back, he was knocked out and drifted here. He asks us to rescue the eggs in his stead and heal his soul. Baby! The Song of Healing sees him walk into the next world surrounded by his band as his essence forms into the Zora mask. Now that we can swim like a Zora, we can enter Zora Hall as well as the nearby pirate fortress. And yes, once again, everyone thinks we're Mikau, even though we lack tattoos in an even more aggressive fashion this time. Our fins turned green and we swapped our belt for a cool green skirt. To enter the pirate fortress, we have to sink to the bottom of the nearby cliffs and destroy the wooden planks hiding the underwater entrance. This leads to a short and mildly frustrating stealth section that can be made much easier by an optional mask that I didn't pick up before coming here. Either way, we find the hookshot, a picture of a female pirate we'll need later, and 4 of the Zora eggs. There are 3 more eggs though, and after eavesdropping on the pirate leader, we find out that they were lost above an eel pit at sea. After dropping off the initial 4 eggs at the local marine lab, we visit the fisherman on the beach who is really into Gerudo pirates. So much so that he'll trade us a picture of a pirate for his seahorse. A seahorse that can lead us safely towards the otherwise inaccessible eel pit near Pinnacle Rock. The eel pit is a terrifying place with eels that make strange, eerie noises, and for some reason I decided to do this during nighttime because I hate fun. You have to kill a number of them to get your hands on the eggs they're guarding though, so down we go. Dumping the rest of the eggs into the Marine Lab's aquarium immediately causes them to hatch and form the notes to a song. The New Wave Bossa Nova, the song that invigorates singing voices and frustrates music enthusiasts because it's literally called the New Wave, New Wave. Very chai tea of them. Playing this in front of Lulu restores her voice, and she uses it to sing a turtle island out of his slumber. We jump on his back and sail off to the Great Bay Temple. This dungeon holds the Ice Arrow and a whole lot of me doing this. The final boss is Gargantuan Masked Fish Georg, and the giant we free asks us to help our friend. Tattle interprets the friend part as the final giant waiting in Ikana, so that's our next stop. But first, we'll need to visit the graveyard nearby. At the back of this graveyard lies a gigantic skeleton. It's ostensibly sleeping, and when you play the Sonata of Awakening in front of it, it wakes up and starts walking away, obstructing your path with flames and enemies. If you can catch and defeat him though, he'll introduce himself as Skull Kita, Ikana's army commander. After losing a battle inside the kingdom, he could not find rest. The nearby chest holds another mask, the captain's hat, containing Kita's soul, that allows you to talk to the skeletons around the graveyard, fallen Ikana soldiers. These soldiers still guard the 3 most important graves in the graveyard. 1 rewards a piece of heart, 1 an empty bottle, and 1 the Song of Storms. On the night of the first day, we can enter the graveyard again wearing this mask to ask the soldiers near the Song of Storms grave to open it up. Inside, we find an iron knuckle and upon defeat, release the soul of Composer Flat. He and his brother Sharp used to compose for the royal family, but Sharp talked to Skull Kid, and we all know how that goes. Flat teaches us the Song of Storms and asks us to bring his message of grief to Flat. Tune in head, we leave the graveyard and take a quick left to find a straight cliffside. Sitting on top of that cliffside is a strange person with a single glowing red eye. They won't care to help you unless you're wearing the Garo mask. They tell you that this is the mask of the leader of the ninjas who once spied on the hilltop castle with the blood-stained history. I might be able to save the souls that wander beyond this valley. Ye, he. A tree pops up out of nowhere and we hookshot up to gain access to Ikana Valley. The strange person vanishes into thin air. Once in the valley proper, we freeze the Octoroks to cross the river and enter ancient Ikana. In the middle of the plateau stands a lone, odd-looking house surrounded by Gibdo, the living dead. They circle the house ominously, but we can't quite fight them. At the back of the valley is the dried-up spring, now haunted by Composer Sharp. He tries to curse us immediately, but playing the Song of Storms cleanses him from the hateful spell Skull Kid put him under. The water starts running again, and the strange house starts playing a tune so grating, even the dead decide to die again. With the dead surrounding the house gone, the little girl who lives inside feels safe enough to check outside again. But if you try to enter the house at this point, she'll spot you and close the door on you. We need another mask. Just in front of Ikana Valley's entrance, you can equip the Lens of Truth to find a soldier sitting in a stone circle. He's been waving for help, but he's too inconspicuous, so nobody saw him. He's wounded though and requests a red potion. When you give it to him, he gives you his mask, the stone mask. This mask makes you as inconspicuous as the soldier was. The little girl won't notice you trying to sneak in this time. Don't worry about the implications of this mask, it's not important. In the basement of this house is a closet. Inside the closet is the girl's father, cursed to slowly turn into a Gibdo. Play the Song of Healing though, and he's cured. the Gibdo mask falling from his face. With the mask, we can enter the nearby well and talk to the Gibdo inside, guarding the doors. They request certain items before they'll open the doors for you. It's a bit of a maze, but to get to the actual item we need, all we need is 5 magic beans, 10 Deku nuts, 10 bombs, a fish, and a bottle of milk. At the end of this little maze, we find the mirror shield, used to reflect the blinding rays of the sun. Using this shield, we can solve the puzzles of the ruined Ikana castle and enter the throne room. There waits the king of Ikana, Igos du Ikana. We fight his guards, and then the king himself, by burning the curtains and letting in the sunlight. As his guards argue about why they lost, Igos interjects with, "Believing in your friends and embracing that belief, by forgiving failure, these feelings have vanished from our hearts. It all happened after somebody thrust open the doors of that stone tower." He asks that we seal the doors of Stone Tower to stop the winds of darkness from blowing through, and to aid us in that task, he teaches us the Elegy of Emptiness, a song that summons a soldier who has no heart. It creates a copy of whatever shape you currently take, one for each mask form. We use the song to enter Stone Tower by letting our copies press buttons for us. Igos really oversold the gravity of very fancy paperweights. Deeper inside the temple hides a mini-boss, the real Gyro Master. He tells you that if you shoot the sacred golden light into the blood-stained red emblem outside the temple, it would rearrange things, in which the earth is born in the heavens and the moon is born on the earth. We loot the light arrow and leave the temple for now. Outside of the temple, we shoot that same arrow into the red symbol hiding behind these blocks, and the entire tower turns upside down. We run through the temple again in this flipped state and find ourselves in front of the boss room where a chest holds the giant's mask. The final boss this time is Giant Masked Insect Twin Mold. This is the only time you can use the giant's mask, and once defeated, we free the final giant. Tatl tells him we'll summon him and his friends at the top of the clock tower so they can do something about Skull Kid. The giant seems sad in response and answers, "Forgive your friend." The miasma around the valley disperses, and we finally collected every giant's mask. At midnight, we climb the clock tower again, and this time play the Oath to Order to summon the giants and stop the moon's descent. Tatl and Tail reunite. Skull Kid is knocked out from the shock, and Tatl immediately starts yelling at him. Tail interrupts her and asks her not to be so hard on him, because he was just lonely. Tatl retorts, "He was trying to destroy everything around him. That is not the same as a lonely child." But Tail insists that the power of the mask made him do it. Skull Kid couldn't handle it. At that, the mask rises up, Skull Kid dangling on its back like a little wooden puppet. The mask calls Skull Kid weak and ascends into the moon, reactivating it. "I shall consume everything," it roars. Tatl begs Link to send them back in time again, but Link wordlessly refuses because he intends to enter the moon as well. Tail, offering to come along, convinces Tatl to join us up there anyway, and so we teleport onto a luscious stretch of grass with a singular tree. The surface of the moon? Or perhaps the inside. Around the tree, 4 children wearing the masks of the temple bosses are running around. At the base of the tree sits a child wearing Majora's mask. If you talk to Majora immediately, he'll ask to play with you and the boss fight will begin. If you talk to the other children first, they will demand that you give them some masks. And then, they teleport you into a mini-dungeon to play with them. At the end of their mini-dungeon, they'll ask for more masks, and then they'll ask you a question. Your friends. What kind of people are they? I wonder, do these people think of you as a friend? You. What makes you happy? I wonder, what makes you happy? Does it make others happy too? The right thing. What is it? I wonder, if you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy? Your true face. What kind of face is it? I wonder, the face under the mask? Is that your true face? You can only do every single one of these if you've collected every single mask in the game. But when you're done, you can talk to Majora again, and he'll lament that everyone has gone away. He asks to play with you again, but since you don't have any masks left, he considers we should play a different game this time. Good guys against bad guys. And then he gives you the Fierce Deity's mask. It reads, "Could this mask's dark powers be as bad as Majora?" Majora gloats that you're the bad guy, and when you're bad, you just run. We're transported to a psychedelic room where the 4 boss masks and Majora hang on the wall. You can now use the Fierce Deity mask to transform yourself into the deity and defeat Majora quite easily. Once each of his phases is defeated, the creature disintegrates into pure light. The moon also disintegrates into a rainbow of colors. The giants stand victorious as the remaining inhabitants of Clocktown cheer them on. We wake up with Tattle and Tail hovering over our face, and Skull Kid and the Giants having a heart-to-heart. They hadn't forgotten about their friend, and they still considered him as such. Skull Kid bows his head in shame, and the Giants leave to their respective corners of the earth. He thought the Giants didn't want to be friends with him anymore, but they did, and they are. Friends are a nice thing to have, he says. Would we be his friend too? The mask salesman shows up as well, staring at Majora's mask and noting that the evil had left the mask after all. But he has his mask back and must continue his travels, asking if we shouldn't be returning home as well. We'd managed to make a lot of people happy, and our masks reflect their happiness. He walks off and seems to quite literally disappear into thin air. And so we leave, as the Carnival of Time finally begins, and we ride off into the forest alone. That's the story of Majora's Mask. The main story, anyway. The game also revolves in large part around the various people living their day-to-day lives in and around Clocktown. And I think it's worthwhile to go over the optional masks quickly too, for completion's sake. Just to the right of the Deku Palace, the butler awaits you in a strangely lethal running gauntlet. He asks that you run it with him, and when you make it to the end, he grants you the Mask of Sense, and tells you how much you remind him of his son. Simply talking to Kafei's mother at the mayor's office and agreeing to help her find her son will grant you the Kafei's mask. At night, you can find a mostly naked dancer dancing on top of one of the mushroom-like structures just outside the snowy mountain. He died before sharing his dance with the world, and holds on to this regret, stopping him from finding rest. If you play the Song of Healing, you soothe his regrets, and he grants you the Kamaro mask that lets you use his dance. At the laundry pool in Clocktown, you can find Guru Guru at night, playing his organ furiously. If you talk to him, he'll confess that he used to be part of an animal troupe led by a dog who wore a fancy mask. He was jealous of the dog and so stole his mask. As thanks for listening to his confession, he grants you the Bremen mask. Light the torches inside the Goron shrine using a Deku stick. This activates the chandelier, which allows you to roll out and break the chandelier's pots until rock food falls out. You then carry this rock food to the Goron in the mountain village with a frog on his head and throw it his way. He thanks you for giving him the energy to leave and grants you the frog on his head, Don Garrow's mask. At the Romani Ranch, we can find a small chicken farm ran by Grog. He's keeping chickens but laments that the moon will likely crush the ranch too, and he'll never see them grow up. If you equip the Bremen mask here and start marching, the chicks will follow you, and once you've collected them all in a line, they grow up one by one. Grog's grateful and gives you my all-time favorite and most used mask, the bunny mask. You can talk to Romani on day 1, who will inform you of the cow-stealing aliens that show up every single year. She requests your help in defeating them with your bow, so on the night of the first day, the aliens appear and you save the day. She gives you a new empty bottle, and with the cow safe, Cremia plans to ride into town the next day. She invites you to come along at the beginning of the second day's night. En route, we're attacked by the Gorman brothers, and you have to once again defend the milk using your bow. If you do so successfully, Cremia will give you Romani's mask. When we enter the milk bar at night, there will be Azora sound-checking the stage, and a third Gorman brother, the leader of the circus troupe, drinking milk at the bar. You can wear each transformation mask as well as your regular form and use their instruments to help the Zora soundcheck. Once you've checked each instrument, the Gorman troop leader will become emotional and give you the circus leader's mask. If you fix and visit the Great Fairy in Clocktown a second time, this time as regular Link, she'll give you the Great Fairy mask. In the swamp exists a house called the Swamp Spider House. You have to kill every single golden Skulltula here and collect their token. Once complete, you can find a man in the first room whose curse you just broke. He hands you the Mask of Truth. On the night of the first day, you can stand just outside the fairy fountain, and at 12, the old lady from the bomb shop will show up. Sakon the thief steals her bag, and you can punch him in the face to save her. As thanks, she gives you the bomb mask. As an aside, you can also literally murder Sakon by using an arrow or a bomb on him. No, I'm not kidding. If you save the old lady from Sakon, you can go to the curiosity shop at night and buy the all-night mask. It's really expensive. 500 rupees expensive. To be able to hold 500 rupees, you'll have to first deposit 200 rupees at the bank to get the 200 rupee wallet. Then you have to go to the Oceanside Spider House in the Great Bay on the first day and clear out all the Skulltulas. If you do, a man will run in and offer you the 500 rupee bag in exchange for the house. The final few masks are all part of the cafe questline. On day 1, you have to wait at the Stockpot Inn until the postman delivers a letter to Anju. When he leaves, you can talk to Anju while wearing the cafe mask, and she invites you to meet her around midnight in the inn's kitchen. When you do, she gives you a letter to Cafe that she wants you to post in the morning. Post the letter at any mailbox in the morning and wait at the laundry pool where the mailman will eventually ring the bell for Cafe to come out and pick up the letter you posted. At this point, you can run into the house Cafe just left and wait for him to run back upstairs. Talk to him and agree to keep his secret, and he'll reveal that he is Cafe, cursed by Skull Kid into the form of a young boy. Because he was only a child, the mask he'd made for their upcoming wedding got stolen, and he's here at the back of the curiosity shop to wait out the thief's arrival so he can chase him and get his mask back. For now, he gives you his pendant and asks that you give it to Anju. You do so, and she resolves to wait for him. Skip forward to the final day, and a little over halfway through that day, you can enter the back of the curiosity shop again to find the curiosity shop's owner there instead. He was an old friend of Cafe and will give you 2 things: the Keaton mask that Cafe was wearing, as well as a letter to Cafe's mother. He mentions that Cafe saw the thief and went chasing after him, so we leave for Ikana Valley again. When you enter the zone, don't cross the river, but instead run to the right to find the thief's cave with some blocks for easy hiding. Hide behind the blocks and move time forward to the night of the final day. Cafe will be there hiding, waiting for the thief to show up and open his hideout. When he does, Cafe and you run after him, and you'll need to do a little time pressure gauntlet to grab the mask back. Cafe is grateful and leaves to find Anju. Teleport back to town now and visit the post office, where you can give the postman the letter to Cafe's mother. It's priority mail, so he leaves immediately to deliver it. Follow him to the milk bar where she's drinking her fears away with milk, and let him deliver the mail. She tells him to flee, and he agrees, leaving the bar. Follow him outside and talk to him at the gate to receive his postman's hat. Now enter the Stockpot Inn and go upstairs to the room just across the stairs that was previously employee only. Anju is there waiting, and a minute before midnight, Cafe bursts into the room with his mask. They embrace and finally exchange vows, marrying just before the end. They grant you the resulting couple's mask. The Cafe questline especially got a lot of people very invested in the world. The creators of the game have stated several times that the 3-day cycle was implemented to save on time, given that Majora's Mask was made in under 2 years, and the various side quests were born of that time constraint. But at the end of the day, it makes the world of Majora's Mask feel strangely more alive and lived in than Ocarina of Time's world ever did. Of course, what you'll hear most of all when people talk about Majora's Mask is how tragic all the characters are, how sad the story is. And that's true, of course, to a point. The people in Clocktown, and to a degree those in the surrounding area, are all very much aware of their own impending doom. Plenty leave town by the end, but some of those leaving only go as far as Romani Ranch. But Grog, living at Romani Ranch, mentions that the moon will likely crush the ranch too. On the night of the final day, Cremia, Romani's older sister, lets Romani try some milk for the first time. She knows her sister won't have another chance to do so. The guards in Clocktown all stare up at the moon, hands over their hearts, only staying because the captain ordered them to do so. The postman can be found arguing with himself about leaving town. He wants to flee, but it's not on the schedule. It's something he follows rigorously. He also wrote a letter to himself in a bid to convince himself to leave anyway, that reads, "To myself, you have been doing a great job delivering the mail. I have a request for my hard-working self. All of the townsfolk have taken refuge. I want myself to flee too. Even if it is not written on the schedule, I want myself to flee. Please, from me." Romani Ranch can have an honest-to-God alien abduction take place if you don't help Romani protect the cows from the invading aliens. Romani comes back the next day, completely out of it, her brain clearly scrambled, and because the cows weren't saved, the ranch will likely go bankrupt as well. But before I start talking about the more in-depth, serious questions I had, let me also make a case for some of the moments where the game doesn't take itself seriously at all. This is Tingle. Tingle is a 35-year-old man still hoping to get his very own ferry. He never once mentions Kokiri Forest though, so how ferries are assigned in Termina is a mystery. He sells you maps and has a catchphrase that he calls magic words. He insists we cannot steal them. This is a dancing scarecrow. Oh yeah, baby. The NPC sounds... In the swamp, you can start a shoot-the-target boat cruise game with Kome to try and win a piece of heart. You have to hit the target under her as she flies in front of you, but not hit Kome. If you do hit her 10 times, she'll get mad, cancel the game, and then threaten to tell your parents. But joke's on her, I'm an orphan, so I can shoot her as many times as I please for the price of 10 whole rupees a run. Zubora and Gabora at the Mountain Village Smithy use the slogan, "Where we take our time to make a good point." And that's such a good sword-making slogan, I'm actually a little mad about it. When you play Epona's song for a cow, it makes them say outrageous things like, "That song just makes me want to let go and put out a lot of milk." And then they make this sound before offering you some milk. When you talk to the Latte Milk Bar's barman on the night of the final day, he says, "As you can see, all of our customers have taken refuge. It may be my undoing, but I'm the sort of fellow who will stay at his business through thick and thin." And I continue standing here at the counter, hoping one of my favorite customers will appear. And I wasn't wrong. See? You stopped in, and that's just very sweet of him. Now then, let's ask some questions and figure out some answers. We'll start with the new world we enter in Majora's Mask, Termina. Plenty has been said about Termina. It's a parallel world, it's a dream world, Link was dead the whole time and it's the afterlife. Most theories, especially the last one, hinge on the fact that the people you meet in Termina are fairly often direct mirrors to some of the people you met in Ocarina of Time. The idea is that they are created purely from our memories, but that theory falls apart easily when you consider that not everyone has a counterpart in Hyrule. Plenty of new characters exist in Termina, and if this world really sprung up purely from Link's memories, that should never be the case. And either way, the manual for Majora's Mask gives us a very direct answer. This is a kind of parallel world that is similar to, and yet different from the land of Hyrule, which was the setting from The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Termina is a mysterious place, and the people Link meets here may look vaguely familiar at first glance. Termina is not a fake world, and it's not a world that technically exists in conjunction to Hyrule either. It's a many-worlds theory situation. That doesn't exclude the Link is dead theory entirely either, mind you. Heaven and Hell, for example, are examples of parallel universes in our world to some degree. But there are also stories of the living entering those realms, and that's where my personal theory takes us to. I don't think Link is dead. but I do think Termina is a form of the afterlife. During an interview with Nintendo Dream, Eiji Aonuma mentions that Termina is derived from terminal. It's a place where people come and go. That initially made me think of a different but connected place. During the opening of the game, we find ourselves in the Lost Woods. The Lost Woods are mysterious enough on their own. When you look at the map of Hyrule, its passages make no sense at all. From the Lost Woods, you can go to Kokiri Forest, of course, but just as easily to Zora's Domain and Goron City, and now apparently Termina. There is no actual physical connection. The Lost Woods themselves are meant to keep people out of Kokiri Forest. If you enter without a ferry, you become a Skull Kid as a child, or a Stalfos as an adult. You die, and your soul is trapped in a monstrous form, haunting the woods forever. Kokiri Forest itself, and the Lost Woods with it, is built clearly around the Great Deku Tree, an ancient tree worshipped almost like a deity. In Shinto religion, there exists a specific type of forest called a Chinju no Mori. They are, very specifically, shrine forests. They surround places of worship, or, originally, were the shrine itself. Woods that held spirits. Woods where the gods were present. And many Shinto shrines were also built on the border between Tokoyo no Kuni and our own current world. Tokoyo is still a fairly vague concept. It can mean many things. It can be a foreign land, exist under the sea, in heaven, or underground. Sometimes it's described as the land of the dead, or simply a distant place that was hard to travel to and from. That's why I think Termina is Tokoyo, a strange everything. Majora's Mask has very clear overtones of grief and acceptance of one's present situation, dead or otherwise. But another reason I do believe we're entering some version of an otherworld is this. During the game's opening, we meet Skull Kid, or rather, he ambushes us. He seems playful, mischievous, not necessarily evil, but not kind either. He's wearing Majora's Mask, but the eyes don't glow. He even takes it off momentarily to look out from under it. Tatl tells us that he'd started to change once he found the mask. He got bolder. He got worse. Clearly the mask is already influencing his actions and his mind, just not to the degree we see later in the game. When Link wakes up, he's spooked. He hides the ocarina behind his back and jumps onto Epona, eventually sliding off and only barely hanging on. He's Skull Kid, an imp. But then we follow him further into the woods. We fall into the other world. Strange, colorful images swirl around us, and we land directly in front of Skull Kid again. This time, the mask's eyes glow. He's hovering. Majora's menacing theme plays in the background. Skull Kid's words are callous, and he doesn't seem intimidated by Link in the least. In fact, he turns you into a Deku Scrub on the spot without much issue. A complete shift from his earlier demeanor. The mask is in control now, because the mask gains power in the other world, where the spirits roam. We can see that same effect again with the Happy Mask Salesman's masks. In Ocarina of Time, the Happy Mask Salesman runs a mask shop. Among other masks, he sells the bunny hood as well as the Keaton mask and the Mask of Truth. Only the Mask of Truth has any form of power here. To read the Gossip Stones, these specific masks appear again in Majora's Mask, but this time they hold power. Or, in the Mask of Truth's case, more power. The power of speed, the power to communicate with the ghost fox, and the power to read the minds of animals. Within Majora's Mask, the Happy Mask Salesman teaches us the Song of Healing. With it, you can soothe the spirits of the lost and capture their essence inside of a mask. Clearly the salesman has used this song before. He's not surprised to see a mask form after you change from Deku to human Link, which means the masks he creates all likely hold some form of mystical ability related to the soul it originated from. But those spirits don't awaken unless you walk into the other world. Outside of it, they're very ordinary masks. And finally, there's the story of the four giants. In the Stockpot Inn, you can find Anju's grandmother. She sits by the fire and asks if you want to hear a story. Normally, you can use her stories to skip time because Link falls asleep during them, but if you have the all-night mask, you can sit through the entire thing. One of them tells of the four giants. This tale's from long ago, when all the people weren't separated into 4 worlds like they are now. In those times, all the people lived together, and the 4 giants lived among them. On the day of the festival that celebrates the harvest, the giants spoke to the people. We have chosen to guard the people while we sleep. 100 steps north, 100 steps south, 100 steps east, 100 steps west. If you have need, call us in a loud voice by declaring something such as, "The mountain blizzard has trapped us," or "The ocean is about to swallow us. Your cries shall carry to us." Now then, there was one who was shocked and saddened by all this. A little imp. The imp was a friend of the giants since before they had created the 4 worlds. "Why must you leave? Why do you not stay?" The childhood friend felt neglected, so he spread his anger across the 4 worlds. Repeatedly, he wronged all people. Overwhelmed with misfortune, the people sang the song of prayer to the giants who lived in each of the 4 compass directions. The giants heard their cry and responded with a roar. "O imp, we are the protectors of the people. You have caused the people pain. O imp, leave these 4 worlds. Otherwise, we shall tear you apart." The imp was frightened and saddened. He had lost his old friends. The imp returned to the heavens, and harmony was restored to the 4 worlds, and the people rejoiced, and they worshipped the giants of the 4 worlds like gods, and they lived happily ever after. Skull Kid is the imp in this story. The timeline is a bit murky here, but by the end of the game, the giants and Skull Kid clearly established that they were friends once. Skull Kid had known the giants since before Termina was fully formed, likely traveling between his home in the Lost Woods and Termina freely. But then the giants left. They had a fight, forcing Skull Kid to leave for the Lost Woods for a long enough time that their tale had passed into legend. There he met Link during Ocarina of Time, who taught him Saria's song. Perhaps this camaraderie made him want to try and make up with the giants, or perhaps he just felt enough time had passed. But he returned to Termina not long after, eventually finding Tatl and Tael and telling them of the fight he'd had with his friends. In this story, the most important part is this. The imp returned to the heavens. Returned, not left for, not passed on, not fled, returned. Because that's where Skull Kid came from. When you enter Termina, you fall a great distance below the earth. Majora's Mask is clearly native to Termina, but we meet Skull Kid outside of this other world, which means he has a way of going back and forth. But if the story of the 4 giants describes the Lost Woods as heaven, that means it's likely inaccessible to them. We don't hear anyone in Hyrule ever mention Termina. We don't hear anyone in Termina mention Hyrule. But the Triforce still shows up in various locations as a clear link between the 2 places. The only people who we know have traveled between these worlds are Skull Kid and the Happy Mask Salesman, both fairly mysterious and vaguely supernatural figures. And speaking of mysterious and vaguely supernatural, there's another owl in Majora's Mask too. This owl has the exact same model as Kepora Gaebora, the owl from Ocarina of Time who insisted that you accidentally repeat his dialogue at least once per game. Even in Ocarina, he seems mystical in nature. He's speculated by many to be Rauru, the Sage of Light. No doubt purely because of the Gossip Stone's little joke about his character being big and heavy but actually rather light-hearted. But I don't actually think the owl in Majora's Mask is Kepora Gaebora, because he doesn't recognize you. The Mask Salesman does, as does Skull Kid, so why wouldn't Kepora? In Ocarina of Time, he consistently addresses us by our name every single time he greets us, bar a single time at Death Mountain. In Majora's Mask, he recognizes us as a fairy child, because of our Kokiri garb, even though we're Hylian and Kepora would certainly know that. Most of his messages are ominous as well. When you reach him the first time in the swamp, he tells you that this swamp has lost its guardian deity, but it was destined to fade anyway. And that destiny is not solely limited to this swamp. In the Goron village, he says, their land is doomed to be smothered in snow and ice forever. It will become a land where no living thing can survive, with a hint of hope that we might still have the strength to change the fate of this land as he had expected. He also mentioned to Darmani that one who could see him would arrive very soon. Clearly there's still something very special about this owl. The owl isn't technically very important to my overall theory, but I do have thoughts about him, and I'll take any excuse to dig into real-world mythology, so I'll give you this story either way. The Ainu, the native population of Japan, reveres owls in two ways. Firstly, there's Chikap Kamway. Kamway meaning something akin to deity, god, divine being. Chikap is an owl god who ensures rituals are enacted properly. He would also send other birds to bring messages from our realm to the heavens above, to inform the gods or make inquiries. His most well-known and important legend revolving around asking the gods why a famine was ravaging the lands. There are a few versions of this tale, and I will tell you one of them. He first asked a crow to be his messenger, but he fell asleep during the instructions, so Chikap killed him. Then he asked a mountain jay, and he too fell asleep and was killed, until finally a dipper bird managed to stay awake, respectfully listening to 6 days of exposition so he could relay this message to the heavens. The shape of Chikap and his divine brothers of the same feather? An eagle owl. This all seems eerily familiar when I consider the way Keipora behaves in Ocarina of Time, especially the falling asleep during his 6 days of exposition part. Eagle owls in their capacity were also said to have the ability to see evil in the world and would often warn people of its presence. The owl in Majora's Mask could simply be a messenger sent by Keipora to watch over Link as he wanders into the otherworld. But I do have one more theory, and you can tell me which one you feel fits best. There exists another owl spirit in Japanese folklore, a yokai called Tatarimoke. It translates, roughly, to cursed infant. According to the stories, it may look like a very regular owl, but it's the spirit of a deceased child. They generally remain in an area close to their home, or the family they lived with while they were still alive. At the start of our adventure, we find a gnarled, sad little tree on the border of Termina and the Lost Woods. That sad little tree is the butler's missing son. That sad little tree is the spirit that inhabits us when we turn into a Deku Scrub. That sad little tree was not the subject of the Song of Healing, but instead of Majora's twisted soul-stealing abilities. Skull Kid ripped the child's essence from his body, leaving the soul trapped there, unable to move on. Ultimately, we do play the Song of Healing for the Deku child, of course, though indirectly. We see the Deku butler weep bitter tears for his lost son during the final scenes of the game, but I believe the tree is only a corpse at this point. No less devastating, but the soul was freed after the Song of Healing was played. However, the soul was not inside of Termina by this point. It was in the strange in-between place between Hyrule and the Lost Woods, and the clock tower's twisting tunnel, within reach of Keipora, of Rauru, perhaps. My theory is that Keipora found and sheltered this lost child's soul and sent him back in the guise of an owl, one of his messengers, to aid Link on his journey. After all, we first meet the owl in the swamp, not far from the Deku Palace. Coincidentally, I also believe that the Deku Scrub was meant to be a Deku hero. Darmani is very directly introduced as a hero of the Gorons. That's his entire character. He's a warrior with powerful punches, and according to his grave, a strength mightier than any other. Mikau's band leader, Evan, also mentions Mikau as a Zoran hero, and he has access to kung fu moves. We know this because you as Link have access to those abilities as well. As Deku Link, you have access to the spinning ability. You can launch into the air from Deku flowers, things you don't see other Deku do. His father, the butler, also runs the shrine gauntlet beside the palace. He'd erase his son there, but the shrine itself is fairly dangerous. Not something you'd want to subject any regular child to, unless they were training for further danger. And why was the Deku Scrub tree found outside of the clock tower tunnel? Why was he leaving for the Lost Woods? And how did his father eventually find him there? I can only think of one reason. He was leaving to go on an adventure much like Link had. He and his father had, as the only native Terminans we know of, found a way up to heaven, or at least thought they did. Coincidentally, we also never hear of the child's mother. Curious, isn't it? Given the Deku Scrub's predicament, it seems that the difference between the Song of Healing and Majora's Mask in terms of soul removal is that the Song of Healing directly heals the soul, and allows it to pass on, leaving only the essence of that individual inside of a mask, where Majora instead takes the essence from a person and leaves the soul to suffer in limbo, unable to move on, stuck in the husk of their corpse. This method does not create a mask either. When we clear a temple and defeat the final boss, they leave behind a mask. Those masks each read, "You have just freed the innocent spirit that this dark mask had kept imprisoned within the body of the evil boss monster." We're then teleported away to meet with the giant we freed, implying that the giant was wearing the boss monster's mask the same way that we use transformation masks ourselves. But we don't play the Song of Healing to free them. We defeat them in combat. That can only mean that we pull the mask itself from the defeated body, because the masks we pick up are not called masks initially, they're called remains. They're called masks in the description because they are both. During another story told by the old lady at the inn, we're shown an image of a previous Carnival of Time. The image shows several masks depicting the giants, but curiously, also the mask Odolwa wears during his boss fight. The story mentions, "For ages, people have worn masks resembling the giants, who are the gods of the four worlds. But over the years, that tradition changed, and people brought their own homemade masks instead." If this image shows us a celebration from years past, then that means the Odolwa mask is no longer displayed in recent years. After all, it's nowhere to be seen during our time spent in Termina. Odolwa was forgotten. In front of the Woodfall Temple, we find a Deku Scrub mark. Tattle pipes up when we land there with a, "I wonder if they worshipped here." The temple itself is hidden away and has clearly fallen into disuse. Got in Snowhead Temple is found frozen at the top. Georg is trapped like a goldfish inside its temple, and Twinmold roams what seems to be an altar placed for sacrifices now reclaimed by the desert. It would make sense for each tribe to take to worshipping the giants in their own way after they split into their four respective directions. Now that the giants were no longer physically among them, their people started attributing physical characteristics to them, each in their own way. The Deku imagined a fierce warrior, the Gorons an unstoppable machine, the Zora a fish to outclass all others, the Ikana with their sun and moon symbolism, twin worms to represent their duality, until worship died down altogether and the kingdom of Ikana fell. But Skull Kid didn't like change, neither did Majora, and so he tapped into Skull Kid's fury and imprisoned the giants in the most ironic way he could think of. He's still a trickster, after all. He trapped them in the forms their worshippers had conceived. Yes, Link's Deku form came from the butler's son, but transformation without a source is not beyond him. He turned Kafei into a child, after all. Why wouldn't he be able to manipulate matter into whatever he wants? Odolwa summons groups of bugs during his fight, and upon defeat burns into nothingness, much like the bugs throughout the dungeon. Got crashes into a stone wall and is buried underneath. Georg shrinks into a small fish before disappearing completely with a splash of water. Twinmold crashes back into the sand it came from. It seems very much like they were beings created out of whatever material Majora had on hand at the time. Then he used the masks that meant to represent the giants as the lock to their cage, trapping them inside of this farce of a body. It's why the bosses return each time, even though you've taken their mask. They were never their mask. They aren't transformation masks, and they don't contain the essence of the boss. They're just a lock. And now that you've taken it, the empty husks can no longer hold the giants, who are free to return to the spirit world they inhabit and heed your call no matter how many times you turn back the clock. But where did the giants come from to begin with? They were Skull Kid's friends, but it seems fairly unlikely that they played together at eye level or even live among the people of Termina day to day. They're absolutely gigantic after all. So let's look at the only solid origin story we have of them, Anyu's grandmother has one more tale to share. That of the Carnival of Time. Each year, the season of harmony begins when the sun and moon are in alignment, paying homage to the way that both nature and time are tirelessly in the process of progressing, For ages, people have worn masks resembling the giants who are the gods of the four worlds. From atop the clock tower roof, a ceremony to call the gods is held and an ancient song is sung. The season of harmony begins when the sun and moon are in alignment. In the tale of the four giants, it's mentioned that they also chose to leave and create the four worlds on the day of the festival, on the day the sun and moon aligned. An eclipse. Plenty of stories exist about the eclipse and its supernatural qualities, but let's put a pin in that for just a moment. Before the giants created the four worlds, the harvest festival would still be held. We can assume it was held for some time even before the giants left, which makes it far more likely that they lived among the people as regular-sized, regular people until then, and something happened to change them into their gigantic form. But who could they have been? And how did they change? For that, we need to look both inside and outside of the clock tower. Inside the clock tower, just behind the mask salesman, is a familiar-looking symbol. It's extremely similar to the pin on Igos du Ikana's cloak. The rest of the foundation also seems more reminiscent of ancient Ikana than Clocktown. The kingdom of Ikana, of course, lies further away from Clocktown, but it certainly seems like whatever civilization would go on to become Ikana built this clock tower at the very beginning. When we look at the outside disc of the clock tower, the centerpiece has a curious illustration. That illustration turns each hour, and at 12 exactly, it very much looks like a human shape ascending to the heavens. With the blue middle as the moon, and the lower image as the sun, it resembles an eclipse as well. Now, here's my theory. At the start of all things in Termina, the people lived together in one place, where current-day Clocktown stands. The golden goddesses who created this world were revered here as they are in Hyrule. Triforce symbolism is found in much of the Ikana architecture and even on the hero's shield, for sale in several places in Termina. In Hyrule, the goddesses have chosen ones. Link is often that chosen one alongside Zelda. But there was no Zelda or Link in this realm, and as far as we know, there was no evil to combat either, so it wasn't necessary. The people of Termina lived together peacefully until what always happens, happened. Infighting. Why else would the giants feel the need to split the world into 4 more areas? During that year's harvest festival, the people of Termina begged for the goddesses to intervene, and intervene they did, by appointing 4 chosen ones, and granting them the power of the giants. The giants themselves are perhaps based on Dairobochi yokai, a gigantic yokai that would shape mountains and create lakes, as they then set out to create the 4 worlds and left to protect them, slumbering from within the sacred realm. The people of what would be Clocktown in the future left to inhabit their preferred lands, and some stayed behind to commemorate the event. They adorned the clock tower's giant clock with illustrations and began wearing the giant masks. One group of people left to found the kingdom of Ikana. The Ikana kingdom very clearly focuses on sun worship. For example, inside of a well outside the palace, we can find a small maze of doors guarded by Gibdo. This underground maze protects the mirror shield. It's a round shield with, seemingly, a bronze or copper rim, used to reflect the sun and open passages inside of Ikana Castle and the stone tower. Mirrors are important in Japanese mythology, especially in relation to the sun, for a few reasons. One is a version of the creation myth of Japan, where Izanagi no Mikoto took 2 white copper mirrors in each of his hands to create Amaterasu Omikami, the goddess of the sun, and her sibling Tsukuyomi no Mikoto, the moon deity. The second is related to an eclipse. A legend tells of Amaterasu having been tormented by her brother Susano to the point of breaking, fleeing into a cave and locking herself in. With the sun's light gone, darkness covered the world. To lure her out again, the gods organized something of a small festival outside her cave that included a large bronze mirror. When she opened the cave door to see what all the ruckus was about, the light returned with her. Mirrors in general represented truth, because they reflected only that what was. They could show the true nature of men, able to see through disguises. And yes, they were believed to have been used during sun-worshipping rituals to reflect sunlight. But another interesting detail here is that the mirror shield seems to have the characteristics of a Chinese magic mirror, in that it reflects the light in a way that shows a shadow of the image on the shield as well. Mirrors of this kind were said to have sacred qualities. Generally, the only features etched into them would be depictions of Buddha. Taoist monks in China would wear these mirrors on their backs to ward off evil spirits, with the belief that evil destroys itself on recognizing itself. What was it the Deku merchant at Ikana said again?
Rumor has it, demons aren't afraid unless they see something that looks the same as themselves.
I've heard people say that this line is about the Garo mask summoning Garo ninjas, but we already get a hint for that from Tatl. Instead, I want to say that this is a hint for the mirror shield. Use the reflection of the mirror shield to show the demons their own image and strike fear into their hearts. So, Ikana worships the sun, at least. But what about the moon? Well, I think that's where the Garo kingdom comes in. The strange spirit character who welcomes us to Ikana can be found again inside of Ikana Valley. One instance is during a minigame to defeat the Poe sisters from Ocarina of Time. When you talk to him, he tells you this. Ikana Kingdom was founded on this land, stained with a history of darkness, drenched in blood. Even now, it is a place where troubled, regretful spirits gather. The only signs within Ikana are of Ikana itself and the Garo. But this spirit tells us that Ikana Kingdom was founded on this land, stained with a history of darkness, drenched in blood. We can read this as the spirit telling us that at this point it is a dark, haunted place. But I think it had been from the start, or at the very least close to it. Because where is this Garo Kingdom? Clearly they had access to Ikana Valley, and the four worlds weren't created until the giants formed them. The legend implies that before they did, there was only the area around Clocktown, so the Garo must have come from within, or if not, at least an area nearby. Given that no one but Pamela's father even speaks on the Garo, outside of the Gorman brothers owning a Garo mask, it seems no one knows about them anymore. Instead, I believe the Ikana nation and the Garo nation were one and the same initially, and only split after differences arose. Specifically, I believe the Garo worship the moon over the sun. When you defeat the Garo master in the stone tower, these are his final words. If you shoot that which releases the sacred golden light into the blood-stained red emblem outside the temple, it shall rearrange things, in which the earth is born in the heavens, and the moon is born on the earth. The Garo master mentions the moon over the sun in this instance, even though he calls the arrow of light the sacred golden light. That's curious, because the moon is not referenced in the temple otherwise. The castle of Ikana is protected with blocks covered in suns. There are sun buttons. The doors in Stone Tower have 2 suns on them, one blood red, one regular. There are suns painted under the pillars of the tower, no moons in sight. Then, to twist the temple upside down, you must shoot this light into the blood-stained red emblem. This may well be a way of sacrificing the sun's light on the altar of blood to facilitate the moon's rise. The sun and moon, as opposites, is a theme throughout the game in general, and in this case, it caused a rift between the Ikana Valley people. The Garo split off, and perhaps left to find their own kingdom just over the nearby mountains. They would still be nearby enough to keep checks on Ikana, but as they are a nation of ninjas, they'd be hard to find, as ninja villages often are. After their less than amicable split, Ikana turned their attention back to their initial founding. For regular people, turning into giants was quite an event, to be sure. Not something you'd forget easily. The power of a god was not beyond mere mortals. Jealousy started creeping into their society. Why shouldn't they become gods too, after all? Why just those 4? In the Stone Tower Temple, we find a very peculiar mask. The only transformation mask that costs magic to wear and seemingly does not contain a soul. Ikana's attempt at godhood. They too wish to be giants. Most of all, they wish to be gods. Many theories exist about the Stone Tower as a symbol of rebellion, and I have to agree. It was built to show the goddesses who slighted them their disdain. And if the goddesses would not grant them godhood, then they would reach the heavens of their own accord. The Giant's Mask was Ikana's attempt at becoming deities themselves, but it was imperfect. It cost magical energy to stay active, because it lacked a soul to fuel it, and only worked within the boundaries of their temple. It was enough to pique the interest of the Garo once again, though. They already knew the area, and so they likely used what is currently Sakon's hideout as their base of operations, which would explain why the Gorman brothers have a Garo mask. Sakon no doubt sold them what he found in their lair when he claimed it as his own, years later. From there, the Garo intended to steal the secrets of the god mask from Ikana before they could perfect their invention. In desperation, Ikana pushed further into the realm of dark magic. Images of Majora's Mask show up everywhere around Ikana Temple, on the blocks and buttons, but the same is true for every other temple. So this was likely done by Skull Kid after the fact in an attempt to stop or slow Link down. But Ikana specifically has one place with very clear Majora imagery that other temples don't have. When the tower is turned upside down, we can eventually fall into the final boss room, Twin Mold's room. Twin Mold, who I believe represents the two sides of worship for Ikana and Garo, Sun and Moon, roams a decayed separate temple. Some of the pillars inside of this temple are decorated with images of Majora's Mask, and in the center stands what seems like a flat altar adorned with a symbol reminiscent of 4 centipede heads. The centipede represented death and, to an extent, immortality in much of Japan's mythology. So it's certainly fitting that this is likely where the Ikana people practiced their hexing rituals. But what were these rituals meant to accomplish? Initially, I suspect they were meant to grant them the ability to use magical powers in general. Because other than Link, who else uses magic directly? Magic is otherwise granted to a person by the Great Fairy, but it's unlikely that she would entertain the Ikana's selfish intent. Instead, they sacrificed their own people on the altar to gain access to this power in impure ways. But in the middle of a war, you can't sacrifice your warriors as easily. Majora, when you meet them in the final battle, has a very childish personality. I don't think this was an easy decision, and I suspect it caused yet another divide within the Ikana Kingdom, but the children were sacrificed instead. They needed more power. When asked about the soul in the fierce deity transformation mask, Aonuma said this: "The best I can give you is just a suggestion. The best way to think about it is that the memories of all the people of Termina are inside of the fierce deity mask. To obtain the fierce deity mask, we have to collect every single regular mask in the game. In other words, we have to help every single person in the game. By the end, the mask salesman tells us,
But Mai, you sure have managed to make quite a number of people happy. The masks you have are filled with happiness. This is truly a good happiness."
Which leads me to believe that the fierce deity's mask's transformation is the result of the people of Termina remembering your kindness and resolve in helping them solve their troubles. In Buddhism, fierce deities are an existing concept. They are manifestations of enlightened Buddhas and generally have other, more peaceful aspects as well. But one of their functions is to destroy the obstacles to enlightenment. So if the fierce deity mask is an amalgamation of grateful souls, it stands to reason that Majora's Mask is an amalgamation of angry souls. Each mask grants the wearer incredible power, but each does so in a different way. The fierce deity mask's powers work together with the wearer to achieve its goals, if the wearer is worthy. Majora's Mask has no reason to want their wearer to succeed. They are, in effect, a prisoner. And clearly it was sentient. No doubt the Ikana people also eventually realized that whoever wore the mask changed their personality. Using the mask to win their war against the Garo was well and good. Majora delights in hurting others after all, but it doesn't seem like it did so in a way Ikana approved of either. Because what does Dampé tell us when we visit the graveyard? "All the graves here belong to the family members of the King of Ikana Castle, a place that lies beyond the mountains. Even nowadays, the ghosts come out at night. It is a frightening graveyard." It doesn't seem like this is a new development. The Gibdo curse must have been around for some time too, if Pamela's father had moved here and started researching them for a long enough time to get cursed himself as well. That's not a 3-day process. This seems like the early work of Majora's Mask. They sacrificed their children to create this mask, to attain the power to defeat the Garo invaders. And defeat them they did. through the power of undeath, now shunning the light they once worshipped.
Haven't you begun to understand? The kingdom being ruined, and us left in this state? Isn't it petty little battles like this that have caused it? Believing in your friends and embracing that belief by forgiving failure, these feelings have vanished from our hearts. It all happened after somebody thrust open the doors of that stone tower.
The undead curse that bound them for all these years began when Majora's Mask was created. Then, with Majora's return, the infighting returned with it. But how did the Happy Mask salesman get his hands on this mask? How did he even know about its existence? As far as we know, he seems to be the only one with any knowledge on the mask. It was sealed in shadow. That seems very much like the boss room of Stone Tower. After all, the land of Ikana is covered in darkness, and to gain entry to the boss room, you have to use the sacred light to turn the tower upside down. Without it, the room is quite literally impossible to reach. Upside down, the tower no longer reaches for the sky. It digs into the dark below, into hell, where Majora is locked away. Who is this man? Why does he know the Song of Healing? Why does he not bat an eye at sealing a soul inside of a mask? How did he know that the Deku Scrub form was not our true form? The mask salesman and the owl seem to be the only ones to know this outside of the Moon Children. Why do the Moon Children have the exact same model as the mask salesman, only smaller? Why do they ask us?
Masks. You have a lot. You too. Will you be a mask salesman? Then I'll play with you. So, the masks. Give me some.
The masks contain the essence of people, not their souls. Those move on. When we create transformation masks, we heal the soul before the mask is formed. The masks created through the Song of Healing are based on compassion. The souls are put to rest, moving on to the great beyond, no matter what. Because when we turn time back 3 days each time, Darmani and Mikau do not come back. Kamado returns, but his spirit does not create a transformation mask, implying that he did not give his spirit fully to the cause. Maybe that's why his dance didn't catch on in life. But Darmani and Mikau each had a fervent wish for you to fulfill: the safety of their loved ones. When you put on their masks, you feel the essence of that wish permeate your body as you transform. While the Song of Healing does so with consent and kindness, it is still an inherently powerful magical tune. Perhaps the most powerful song in the game, or even the series. Forget temporary weather changes. You're capturing the essence of an entire person and wearing their skin as a suit. And this song is casually given out by the mask salesman, who also happens to know that your Deku form is a stolen soul, not your real body. The Moon Children, if they are just a manifestation of Majora's inner child, still present themselves as tiny mask salesmen, and even mention the profession. Almost like mask salesman is code for something else. A soul collector, a Grim Reaper. That's another reason he wanted Majora's Mask so badly. Yes, the mask was about to visit destruction on Termina, but it also contained the souls of the children sacrificed to create it. Souls that weren't blessed with the Song of Healing, but simply snatched away through a bloody ritual. By the end of the game, the salesman picks up Majora's Mask and says,
"Oh, so the evil has left the mask after all."
After all, implying that he was unable to cleanse the mask initially and likely had to take it elsewhere to do so. But Link exceeded all expectations and managed to cleanse it for him. Or did he exceed expectations? The salesman can see that the evil has left the mask at a glance. He doesn't seem bothered or particularly moved by the events of the day, almost like he expected it to happen all along. And really, why was he so set on leaving the task of regaining the mask to Link? Clearly he knows of us. He runs the mask shop in Hyrule and had been keeping an eye on Link, but I very much doubt that he'd been sprinting to keep up with us during our chase of Skull Kid. It seems more likely to me that he knows of Link's exploits. Even stranger, by the end of Ocarina of Time, after everything he'd gone through, Zelda and Link decide to return to the past so Link can warn Zelda of the future. In doing so, everyone will have forgotten his great deeds, will have forgotten how he saved the world. Even though Zelda believed him, of course, who else would know what really happened outside of Navi? And how does this man know of the Ocarina of Time? When he asks you to return the mask to him, he uses very matter-of-fact language.
What? Is it not a simple task? Why, to someone like you, it should by no means be a difficult task.
To someone like you, the salesman knows we are the hero of time, knows we saved Hyrule, knows we are a capable warrior regardless of our age.
The one thing is, I'm a very busy fellow, and I must leave this place in 3 days.
What on earth could be more important than retrieving a mask that could destroy the world? A legendary mask that he, by his own admission, went to great lengths to obtain. Suddenly he's simply too busy of a man to stick around more than 3 days. No, he definitely knows that in 3 days, the mask will simply be lost to him.
But yes, you'll be fine. I see you are young and have tremendous courage.
Interesting that he'd use Link's specific Triforce piece to describe him. When you fail to retrieve his mask during your first encounter at the top of the clock tower, he's furious. Seemingly, anyway. He rants and raves about the terrible things that could happen if he doesn't get his mask back. He begs you to please get it back still, and when you agree, his demeanor immediately changes. He was certain we would agree to help him anyway. He doesn't ask questions about how we miraculously acquired our Ocarina of Time again 2 seconds after walking out the door of his clock tower either. He doesn't ask anyone else for help. Not the soldiers in the city, not the other heroes of the nearby tribes, no one. He relies on Link entirely. And when you fail to play the Song of Time to return to day 1 before the moon falls, you've met with a terrible fate, haven't you? Just a close-up of the salesman's face. The cycle starts again. The masked salesman seems like he might be a disguise of the goddess of time. After all, she's mentioned multiple times throughout the game as the one who grants us the power to return to the past at all. But I think he was part of the ancient Ikana people. He often refers to Majora's Mask as my mask. Yes, he's the last person to obtain it, but it's an odd choice of words. It's not really his mask, is it? It's an ancient artifact at best. But he's not at all surprised to see time travel and mask transformations in the least. He knows how to travel to Termina without trouble, and he says he only has 3 days to complete his quest here. In 3 days the moon will fall, but in 3 days the eclipse also ends. The festival is over, and with it, I wager, the door between Hyrule and Termina closes too. I mentioned the spiritual significance of an eclipse earlier, and I believe that the eclipse in this case is the reason we have access to Termina, the other world, at all. I think the mask salesman knows that, because he knows a great deal more about this realm than we do. He's been here before. The children on the moon resemble the salesman because they are the children of ancient Ikana. The mask salesman was the original ritual master when Majora's Mask was created. That's how he knew about it. That's why he's still alive. He was cursed with eternal life as well, but fled like a coward. It's why he collects masks. Collecting Majora's Mask was his ultimate goal, to atone for what he'd done. He himself is also a restless soul. He used his considerable knowledge of rituals and magic to discern the future and the role Link would play in recovering his mask. He knew that Link, a hero chosen by the goddesses, was the only one who stood a chance of cleansing the mask at last, something he himself, corrupted as he was, would never be able to do. The Song of Time didn't have time-traveling powers in Ocarina of Time because it's not the song that facilitates the time travel, it's the mask salesman. It's why you return to him, safe and well, even if you don't play the song and the world ends. By the end of the game, he turns around and walks away, disappearing into nothingness, taking Majora's Mask with him, finally at rest. I wouldn't be surprised either if he influenced the Sheikah in some way. After all, the Mask of Truth exists in both worlds, as does an entity who seems to possess the ability of the mask itself. This guy again. When you win his minigames, he uses your name directly, even though you never told him.
That is your name, correct? I can read people's hearts. I knew you would be coming here. Now, my own soul has been healed too.
Using the term soul healing and the ability to read people's hearts, a gossip stone describes the Mask of Truth as the mask that can see into people's hearts and minds. Very curious. Now, there are a few questions left, but I would like to quickly mention the Kafei and Anju quest as well. Kafei and Anju's story is by far the most in-depth and interesting side story of the game. Two lovers, promised to each other as children, forced apart by an evil curse and an opportunistic thief. In this case, I don't have any specific theories, I'm afraid, but they link into the theme of the game, at least from my perspective. During their questline, Kafei gives you the Pendant of Memories to deliver to Anju as proof that he has not forgotten their promise, that he still intends to marry her on the night of the third day. The pendant itself is what caught my attention because it's shaped somewhat like a scarab beetle pendant, especially in the game's promotional art of Kafei with its slightly more hooked protrusions. This feels important because of the symbolism of scarabs in Egypt. Specifically, they were linked to the god Khepri, the form Ra took when he created the sun. The scarab itself then became a symbol of the cycle of life and the concept of rebirth and regeneration. The pendant then could well be a heart scarab amulet. Heart scarab amulets were given to the dead to be taken into the grave with them, sometimes replacing the heart itself should the deceased lose their physical heart in the afterlife. The heart, believed to be the seat of intelligence and memory. In Majora's Mask, that would mean that the pendant we're asked to bring to Anju is quite literally an allegory for Kafei's heart. Then there's the statues created by the Elegy of Emptiness. I don't think I have much to add that isn't obvious, but I did want to talk about Link's image very quickly, as well as the Fierce Deity mask. The Elegy of Emptiness creates a copy of the body you inhabit at that time, but the different transformation masks don't have a soul, which is why their eyes are empty. Link is the only one who is alive, and so has a soul and pupils on his statue. I've heard people talk about the statue's smile often enough, but it really seems closer to a grimace to me. A case of smiling through the pain. The statue itself also doesn't have a sword belt. Majora's Mask version of Link has a sword belt, but Ocarina of Time Link does not. To me, it implies that this statue isn't necessarily a copy of Link's current body, but of his psyche. The Elegy of Emptiness shows an image of the individual's headspace. When you transform into a Zora, for example, you become Mikau. It's why you know how to play the band's songs and know how to use his Zora abilities at once. Your state of mind is Mikau, the Zora guitarist. Link's state of mind in regular form is that he's still stuck as the child he was during Ocarina of Time, now forced to bear the burden of stopping yet another nation's imminent destruction. The Moon Children, when you complete their mini-dungeons, each have something to say to Link at the end, or rather a question to ask. The children seem to read into Link's fears. Your friends? Do those people think of you as a friend? Link doesn't really have any friends. Navi was the closest thing to a friend he had after Saria became a sage. Zelda was a friend perhaps, but somewhat unreachable as a royal of Hyrule. And really, in the end, only Navi knew what Link had gone through in his journey to save the world. Link has helped and saved so many people during his life, but he couldn't truly call any of them friend. I wonder, what makes you happy? Does it make others happy too? Link has spent his entire childhood saving others, going on quests to help other people who, for the most part, don't even remember them. Not in Hyrule, and not in Majora's Mask, where he has to turn back time every 3 days. He's never been able to just live his life focusing on himself. He lives for others. He has no idea what makes him happy. The right thing, what is it? If you do the right thing, does it really make everybody happy? If Link can just save the world one more time, maybe everything will be alright? If he just does the right thing and continues helping everyone but himself, it'll be alright. Everyone will be happy, so Link will be happy too, right? I wonder, the face under the mask, is that your true face? The Moon Children can tell when you're wearing a transformation mask and ask you to take it off before talking to them. So when they say these things, they're talking to you in your regular human form. But the final child asks you about the face under your mask. Link pretends. He wears a mask of stoic courage. He's been told that's what he has to be. He's the hero of time. He's the chosen hero. He's the wielder of the Triforce of courage. Of course he has to save the world. Of course he has to do it again and again. That's his purpose. That's all he is. That's all he's been allowed to be. Who is Link? What's his personality? What are his likes and dislikes? Has he fallen in love? Does he have any fears? We don't know Link, because he wears a mask of competence. That's what the Elegy of Emptiness statue represents. Link pretending, so everyone else can live in peace, protected by him. Coincidentally, the Fierce Deity mask transformation also doesn't have any pupils, because the Fierce Deity mask doesn't have just one soul, but many. And speaking of the Fierce Deity mask, the entire scene where you receive the mask and the mask itself are extremely reminiscent of the merging between Buddhism and Shinto religion in Japan. The tree in the center of the moon may represent the Bodhi tree under which the Buddha reached enlightenment. When Buddhism came to Japan, however, not everyone embraced it immediately. A lot of Shinto branches adopted the various Deva and Buddha into Shinto as the true forms of the kami. Yoshida Kanetomo did not agree with that assessment and began the Yoshida Shinto branch of Shintoism. In this school, the kami are the true versions of which the Buddha are derived. According to its teachings, if one is truly purified, their heart can be the kami's abode. The ideal of inner purification was a mysterious state of mind in which one worshipped the kami that lived in one's own heart. To achieve this form of purification, one must strip away the external obscurities and impurities until we reach truth, sincerity, and heart. That way, we can see clearly our inner divinity. Even if the Fierce Deity mask was otherwise fueled by dark powers, Link could overpower its potential evil through his own purification. By helping all of the people in Termina, and through it obtaining the Fierce Deity mask, Link achieved enlightenment himself. His heart was one with the kami, and the kami responded to his plight through the Fierce Deity mask, a wrathful deity from Buddhism. Now, finally, the question of Navi. Why did Link leave to find Navi? Why did his search start in the Lost Woods? In Kokiri Forest, where the Deku Tree lived as the protector of the trees, we find the only race to both never age and have constant fairy companions. Link, despite living among the Kokiri, does not receive a fairy until his quest begins, because he is Hylian. But the Deku Tree specifically sends Navi to him to assist him in his quest. And so, Link, with Navi, leaves the forest.
The great Deku Tree said that if a Kokiri leaves the woods, he or she will die.
But that's strange, because we see plenty of Kokiri at the ranch during the end credits. The Kokiri without their fairies. The Kokiri the Deku Tree meant in that quote were not the children. He was talking about the fairies specifically. We don't see fairies outside of Kokiri Forest save for very specific situations. The fairy fountains and fairy spirits we can find around the world don't seem to talk. They simply heal Link and then disappear into nothingness. Navi persisted because the Deku Tree had given her a mission. Clearly, he knew she would have to leave Kokiri Forest, so he knew she'd have to survive long enough to see her mission through. But once her mission was over, By the end of Ocarina, she flies off towards the upper window in the Temple of Time. A heavenly light shines down from above, and she disappears. She died. I've mentioned a few times before this that Navi was really the only person who knew what Link had gone through from start to finish. His only real friend and companion. Why did Link start his search in the Lost Woods? For the same reason that Termina's portal opens there. It's where the spirits roam, and the veil is thin. It's easy to assume that Link found his way to Termina by accident while chasing Skull Kid. But what if Termina was exactly what he was looking for? Termina, where he had hoped non-healing fairies go when they've lost their partner. But we don't find her by the end. Instead, we find acceptance. Majora's Mask, regardless of any other theory I might have, is first and foremost a game about accepting change. From the consistent sun and moon themes, the rebirth of another year, to the many instances of the dead lamenting their departure from this world, or their stubborn wish to cling to a life lost. Skull Kid's entire story begins when change comes to his life. Unwanted change. Skull Kid is immortal. The spirit of a child who got lost in the woods. Finding friends as a ghost must be difficult to begin with, but then those friends left him. But change is inevitable, and just as Skull Kid had come to terms with his friends moving on, Link had to accept that Navi was gone, because the only constant in life is change.
Shouldn't you be returning home as well?
If you've made it all the way to the end, did you know that the Song of Healing is Saria's song played backwards? Now you do. I'm well aware that a good number of my theories are a little far-fetched, and I'm alright with that. Videos like these are just a way for me to organize my thoughts on any subject more directly, so I can put it to rest in my head, and hopefully for you it's a video with stories that are, at the very least, somewhat entertaining to listen to. I actually had some theories about the face on the mirror shield as well, but even I thought those were a little far. Time moving faster in Termina than Hyrule, and all the possible theories that come with that. What I'm trying to say is that my theories are just one way of explaining Majora's Mask, and if you have any theories of your own that I didn't touch on here, I'd love to hear them too. No matter how out there they might be, you already know I don't mind. Yes, even if they include the Hyrule Historia and other sources. I just like reading cool stories. And to all of the people who support my work through any platform at all, thank you for always being so patient with me while I work on longer videos like these. I hope you feel it's worth the wait. It means a lot that you're willing to give me your time and attention at all, and if you'd like to support me as well, there's a Ko-fi link in the description, and I also stream on twitch.tv/Jinzy. I stream retro games on Tuesdays, and mostly story-heavy first playthrough stuff on Monday and Thursday right now. Maybe see you there. Coincidentally, the clock tower itself could well be a reference to the Temple of Heaven, a temple in Beijing where the emperor would pray for a good harvest. That temple also has 4 main tall red pillars like the giants, as well as a total of 24 smaller pillars. Majora's Mask has 24 masks to collect. I know too much about temples after this script.